True story time. I was at a furry meetup at a non-furry convention, and I was around meeting folks with the usual conversations, showing off the fursuit, asking for photos and video, sharing art, putting faces to familiar online names. You know, the usual. Mingling. I had been chatting with two people who were there for the furry meetup together, in some, usual chat fashion, and they'd recognized me from online. And we were talking about fursuits and other stuff. Then one of them wandered off. The other one quickly looked around, leaned in and said conspiratorially, "You're not really a furry, are you? Because I don't think I'm a furry." Which is kinda odd to say, sharing furry art with someone holding a fursuit head at the time. But, taken a bit by surprise, I answered in an unguarded fashion, I don't know. I don't even know what being a furry means. This came up recently with my Jax cosplay cameo video, with discussion in the comments about Michael Kovac, the voice actor for Jax, and their reluctance to take on the label of furry, even with some activities that intersect with the fandom. And honestly, I totally get it. I wonder to myself what exactly that label means versus how I interact with the fandom, and I wanted to talk about it. And by the end, you'll get the shocking confessional answer to the question if I'm a furry or not, and why we... You know what? We need clickbait mode for this. Is Chashi a furry? The answer may shock you. Watch until the end to find the shocking truth all about... Does anyone else get annoyed by watch until the end on a video? Like, isn't that implied by a video? Imagine if a movie had, watch until the end on it. You know what? Maybe I'll just have the last 5 minutes be footage of a lava lamp for good measure. Anyway, we could lead in with the standard "what is a furry" talk that's been done many times before, but that's kind of trite and overdone. So maybe we'll just talk more about group identity and belonging in the context of the social contract. I think Hobbes put it best when Part 1, what is a furry? Okay, we're doing this. Wikipedia, the bastion of all correct information, defines furry as this. The furry fandom is a subculture interested in anthropomorphic animal characters. So if you're interested in anthropomorphic animals, you're a furry. But what does anthropomorphic mean? Back to Wikipedia. Anthropomorphism is the attribution of human traits, emotions, or intentions to non-human entities. So if it's supposed to be an animal, but we view or treat it in some way as human, it's anthropomorphic. Let's give some examples. Jax is an anthropomorphic rabbit. So are these. This is an anthropomorphic mouse. These are anthropomorphic cats. You might recognize some of them. This is an anthropomorphic otter. This is an anthropomorphic hedgehog. And this is an assortment of anthropomorphic animals. You might be saying, but they look like animals. That doesn't count. But again, it's not just how they look. If we give them human speech and intentions, it's anthropomorphic. Like when you look at this adorable picture and say, "Aw, he's worried about incoming layoffs." You're anthropomorphizing him. But of course, it's not just art and memes. Go to a sports game? Anthro-animals. Watch an ad? Anthro-animals. Heck, we can take this back through history as well. The gods with animal heads are not uncommon. Or go back to Genesis chapter 3 verse 1, and we have a talking snake. Right from the beginning, in the biblical sense, an anthropomorphic animal was there, encouraging us to do naughty things. Hello, Adam. Hello, Eve. Would you like to come to a room party? We're serving succulent forbidden fruit there. I will see you soon. Some things never change, but maybe biblical isn't old enough for you. The year is 2013, not too long ago, and archaeologists have put the finishing touches on a project over 40 years in the making. Beginning in 1969, they'd started assembling ivory fragments with tool marks found in multiple excavations from a cave in Germany. The original pieces were found back in 1939, but let's just say that geopolitical events in Germany in 1939 brought the excavation to an abrupt halt, and the pieces were left sitting in a box for decades. But once the archaeologists began to assemble them and realized exactly what they had, they knew they hit the jackpot and needed to find more, so they went back multiple times for multiple excavations. This is the Löwenmensch figurine, also known as the Lion Man, carved from ivory, about a foot in length, and unmistakably a carving of a figure with a human body and a lion's head. Like, my brain still wants to be skeptical given the clarity of the piece. But there it is. And you might be thinking, wow, that must be a pretty old sculpture. But what's the big deal? But you see, I wasn't being fully accurate in the description. This wasn't exactly a lion. It was a cave lion. And those went extinct a long time ago. I was also being a bit vague before when I said ivory. You might be thinking elephant, walrus, or boar. But this is mammoth ivory. This is old. Older than writing. Older than the wheel. Older than pottery. This is Paleolithic. Stone Age. The ivory and surrounding objects have been dated between 35,000 and 41,000 years old. Now, you might be thinking, wow, that's pretty advanced for art of that age. And you're right, it's the most advanced sculpture of the time practically by default. Because as of right now, it sits with a couple pieces all in the same age range as the oldest undisputed figure carvings on Earth. Archaeologists have found some older objects adorned with markings, but the only definitively earlier art we have of a thing, i.e. representational art, are cave paintings. And those were for animals, actual animals. So Lion Man not only stands currently as among the oldest pieces of sculpture ever, it is currently the earliest imagined piece of art. Future Cheshi weighing in here. There may actually be an older piece of art that depicts human-animal hybrids. This one is still under debate, because the figures aren't exactly very clear, but it's from a cave painting that's been dated at 43,000 years old from Indonesia. So if this is true, this would place the earliest depiction of a non-real event, i.e. a story, as even earlier than Löwenmensch, or Lion Man. But it still involves animal-human hybrids, so I guess, oh no, furry art goes even further back. And I find it interesting that around the same time we see Lion Man, we see the first conclusive figure carvings depicting stylized humans as well. It suggests that almost as long as we could imagine ourselves with animal aspects, or vice versa. Before we even had pottery, we imagined and carved a human with a lion's head. Fursona Prime. The OG furry figurine existed almost before we had evidence of non-furry figurines. So next time some dude bro from high school who friended you to try to recruit you as a downline selling supplements says something like, back when we hunted the mammoth, nobody worried about having a fursona. Send them a link about Lion Man, and point out we hunted the mammoth, and then proceeded to make furry art out of it. And we're still smart enough to not fall for MLM schemes, you stupid fuck. What I'm getting at here is that humans have projected human thoughts and aspects onto animals for probably as long as we've had human thoughts ourselves. And that has not changed one bit. So as a species, we're all clearly interested in anthropomorphic art, and therefore as a culture, never mind a subculture, we're all furries. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I know the fake credits joke's getting old, but what I'm getting at is clearly having one or more anthropomorphic animals in your life isn't the bar for furry, because we clear that bar as a species. So maybe everyone's a bit furry somewhere, just some folks are in denial, but that doesn't really narrow it down much. So let's go next with the obvious. This fuzzy thing I wear. Does that make me a furry? Well, no. From survey data, only about 10% of folks at furry conventions own a full suit, and about 25% own a partial form like masks, paws, etc. So that's clearly not a given. The majority of people at furry conventions aren't in a costume. Just look at footage that isn't some fursuit specific event. And on the flip side, there's folks who've got a suit, but have never been to a convention for, well, various reasons. It's funny, because I remember back in the day, anime cons in their FAQ would have to answer, do I need a costume to attend? And I've still seen that for some furry cons as well. It's obvious if you've ever been to a con, but I guess when so many of the photo eyes are on costumes, people just kind of expect it. But it's still the exception rather than the rule, even at furry cons. But if you really want to prank your friend, tell them it's mandatory and they should get one. Speaking of conventions, I hear you say, well, someone's at a furry convention. Clearly they're into furry stuff. That's maybe not a given either. Like, here's an example, a personal example. I have been going to various fandom conventions for literal decades now, probably attending between 100 to 200 conventions in that time. I've been going to anime conventions the longest. I've attended, cosplayed at, hosted panels, volunteered, and even helped run them. Do I watch a lot of anime? No. Hell, I've been to several anime conventions in the last year or two, and I can barely count on one hand the number of hours I've spent actually watching anime during that time. Same goes for sci-fi and sci-fi cons. So you might be asking, well, why do you go? And it's the same reason many of my friends still go. It's a chance to hang out together and just vibe with the friends we've made over the many years, all in a weird, friendly environment with stuff to do together. You know, it's one of the things that makes me laugh. The folks who have this attitude that going to a convention makes you a friendless loser, but are also baffled at the concept of knowing so many people. It's more convenient to find a weekend event to hang out together. Just a bunch of weirdos getting together to vibe about something for a few days. And besides, it's fun taking a break from real life to run around in a silly costume. Don't knock it until you've tried it. And in the last few years, furry cons have brought the vibe more than the mega conventions out there. We'll see if the wild growth of furry cons changes that, but I like the small cons for being weird, uncool, and perfectly okay with that. Freedom to be cringe in the best possible way. So that brings us back to what makes someone a furry. Most furries don't have a fursuit, and you can have various reasons to go to a convention. Now I hear the pedantic ones say, yes, but if you go to conventions and have a fursuit, you must be a furry. Like somehow those powers combine. But if you have an anthropomorphic or mascot costume and want to wear it somewhere, wouldn't a furry con be the best place to show it off? Everyone has their reasons. I like the chance to run around and be silly with a crowd that has fun with it. Same reason why I break out the giant Hello Kitty for conventions, furry or otherwise. It's fun to brighten someone's day and give them that amazing photo op. So I want to go back to the very scientific source of Wikipedia and see how much heavy lifting the term subculture does. And you know, while I get the use of the term subculture, it being defined relative to the rest of quote-unquote normal society, that never sits well with me for some reason. I would rather talk about what brings people together rather than what makes them different from quote-unquote normal, whatever that means. I prefer the term community, and frankly, I personally prefer being a part of the furry community over the phrase being a furry. I don't know if that's just semantics or me in denial. Thinking about it more, you could do all the activities associated with, well, furry, without the furry community. So maybe that's something different. Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely interested about what people think here. So maybe I just like the term community because I think it's a better analogy for a fandom. Like, think about it as a literal physical community. When you're in a community, there's no singular definition of you are this. It's more like a place where you live amongst people and are accepting of the neighborhood without being required to take part in everything. I love the furry community because it's unapologetically weird, creative, welcoming, and tolerant. If you are willing to tolerate those who are different, you can find your people here. And for people who are grappling with the OMG a furry label shock, or feeling like you don't belong because you think there's like a full checklist, I think there's a lesson in perspective here. You shouldn't feel obligated to do or be anything to prove you're part of a community. But it does mean that you should be accepting of those in the community who do. It's like you're renting an apartment in the club district. You're not required to go clubbing, but really you should be okay with other people around you doing otherwise. If people are being terrible or doing something against the law or against you directly, you can have a problem with that. But you really should accept that people around you are going clubbing. Maybe that's an easier bar to clear, or you just feel more comfortable with that. Something to think about. And this is all personally still very fluid. I still don't know what it means to be quote-unquote a furry. And maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But I find the community to be one where I'm comfortable being a part of it. And this isn't saying that the furry community doesn't have bad people in it, but there seems to be a much more proactive effort to keep those people out. And I appreciate that. So in conclusion, wait, this needs clickbait voice. Is Chashi a furry? The answer is coming right up. Sorry. So here's my thing with identification versus community. I don't believe they're the same. People always generalize them with, if you're part of the furry community, you're a furry. And frankly, I disagree. Identity may be what you are, but community is what you accept, protect, and foster. You can have the coolest fursuit, but if you're a piece of shit, you might be a furry, but you should not be part of the furry community. If you're a homophobe or transphobe, it doesn't matter how good your art is, you will not be part of the community. I don't know what it means to be, quote-unquote, a furry, and frankly, I do not care. The label doesn't matter, and fans or haters alike may call me that regardless. But I'm happy and hoping to consider myself part of the furry community, and I hope the community in kind agrees. Because the important part, now more than ever, is to find the people who are tolerant of differences and also ready to draw a line over what's acceptable. I've seen too many fandoms where it's been decades and they're still having those arguments, and so far the furry community has kept that at bay, possibly by being overwhelmingly LGBTQ+ in demographics. So with that in mind, I leave you this. Don't worry about measuring up to someone else's yardstick of furry, and you should never feel like there are furry things you need to be. Be yourself. But if you want to be part of any community, understand that community is less about what you do and more about what you accept and foster. And on the flip side, if there are actual problems, it takes a true community to call that out. And personally, I think community is much more important, because we could always be a weirdo at home in a costume, but all of this takes community. So in conclusion, I'm happy to consider myself part of the furry community. I'm here for a weird, intolerant community, and if that weirdness keeps intolerant people out of the community, it's a bonus. As for me being a furry, I'll leave that up for you to decide. I have no idea what that means. I just dress up in a funny costume and hang out in the furry community. Let me know in the comments what you think and why. But I assure you, if someone being a furry pisses you off, then I am most certainly the most cringy, most furriest creature on this planet, just to ruin this for you. Ooh woo. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe. The overlords remind me that this helps. And now, as promised, here's 5 minutes of a lava lamp. Watch until the end for the shocking conclusion. Okay, so you're here. I couldn't just leave 5 minutes of complete silence here. Again, I want to thank everyone for watching this video. I only had one major detour on this one, so hopefully this is a little more digestible. I did one on Sonic the Hedgehog, and it kind of went way too many places, and, well, maybe this one does a bit better. I do encourage you to check that one out. I did have a lot of fun researching that one. I do want to give a private apology to Michael Kovac, because I kind of feel bad that this Jack's costume got lumped onto him as well, because it sounds like he's dealing with a lot of frankly annoying kids who are like, oh my god, a furry. It sucks, and it's kind of this hilarious dance of these kids who are a fan of the show and a fan of the character, but also still trying to show off their edgy, hating furries for whatever reason side. As a bit of a preview, I've been thinking a lot about the whole why that particular age demographic seems to have a hate on for furries, and I do have a couple of theories about that one, so stick around. That video is coming up sometime in the future. It'll be probably a short one, but we'll talk about it. You know, I've got some theories, but I want to do a little bit of research. If there are grounded theories about that in terms, that I try to use those terms. Stick around, that one's coming. I've also got some videos about conventions coming as well. We'll talk about the recent rise in popularity of furry cons and what that might mean for how they look in the future. I think that's a pretty common discussion point right now, so I might as well weigh in. Again, I've been going to cons for a very, very long time and watched the same popularity explosion that happened in anime cons way back in the day, so history might be repeating itself, or it might not, I guess. But yeah, stay tuned for some more discussion on that one. If you're wondering about the ASMR content, I'll probably do another video talking about this. I know some people love the voice for ASMR reasons, and if I'm going to lean into that for some future videos, that might be on a separate channel. We'll talk more about this maybe in a bit of a future video. But essentially, YouTube likes your content to be segmented on a particular topic, and if you have two very divergent topics in the same thing, YouTube doesn't like it, and it ends up showing your videos to nobody. So I'm trying to make sure that my stuff gets out there and gets seen, because hey, this is a lot of fun, and I want to see how far I can take this madness. But again, this is just me rambling a little bit at the end of the video. Nothing scripted on this part of the talk, just me talking away. Oh, I did promise at the very end there's going to be some shocking reveal and watch towards the end, so make sure you do that, right? Big shocking reveal. But yeah, and some talking about the amazing digital circus might happen. It's interesting to me as a show because it's not really in my age range. I'm not really the target demographic for the show, but I still appreciate it. But I do want to thank all the people who joined up. A bunch of people found me from the Happy Place video, and that's really cool. And the surprised comments of, wait a minute, you're from the Happy Place video. It's always kind of cool. So I'm glad that I had an impact in my 5-second cameo. Oh yeah, okay, so we're getting towards the end of this video. I think we're at the, I promised 5 minutes of lava lamp, and that's what you're gonna get. Now, we gotta have a shocking reveal at the end of this. I told you to watch towards the end. This is gonna be a big one, because, you know, my identity's been hidden the entire time. So, I'm gonna unmask for you right now. Look at that, there I am. I am unmasked, my total real self. You can see me. Isn't that neat? If you're wondering, my real name is